Chapter 43 to 49. A year had passed since Earth's Dragon Balls had been summoned by Lord Slug. It's a waste to not use the Dragon Balls when they are available. Raditz muttered. The Z-Team could potentially summon Shinron 3 times during their 3 years training before fighting the androids. Raditz borrowed Bulma's Dragon Radar and collected all 7 Dragon Balls. He had already decided on the first wish. In order to further improve their relations with the Namekians, he decided to use Earth's Dragon Balls to revive all the Namekians that had been killed by Frieza and his men, and also by Vegeta and Nappa. This was something the Namekians' Dragon Balls could not do. They might be able to revive the same person without restrictions, but they could only wish back one person with each wish. It wasn't feasible for them to wish back 3 Namekians every 130 years for who knows how many years. Raditz made his wish and watched the Dragon Balls shoot into the air, scattering around the world. Revival. Should I revive Bardock and Jine? Raditz had mixed feelings about his parents. He just inherited Raditz's body. He wasn't sure how he would feel with suddenly having parents. Since he had come to terms and accepted his identity as Raditz, he should of course accept Raditz's parents as well. But it was a different feeling to suddenly get parents when you're already an adult. If you're a child, it was fine to depend on the adults. Feelings were slowly developed over time. He only had the old Raditz's memories of his parents, he himself did not really miss his so-called parents. But just now, when he suddenly had that thought of maybe reviving his parents, he suddenly felt a heartache. It was obviously not him that missed his parents, but the old Raditz's heart. Well, it's not like the team has any wishes to make, I might as well use the Dragon Balls next year. Raditz muttered, he put his palm and felt his heart beating. He made up his mind to simply wish for his parents to revive. Whatever comes next, he'll just let nature take its course. In order to maximize his profits, Raditz took Piccolo, Goku, and Gohan with him and paid a visit to planet Namek. It was important to make them remember his actions of reviving all the Namekians and make them feel indebted to him. Raditz felt like he would make a good PR manager if he ever needed a job. Raditz and they spent a few days hanging around and chatting with various Namekians. Gohan played with Dend and Cargo. It took them by surprise upon seeing Gohan's blonde hair, but it didn't take long for them to recognize their friend. After a few days on planet Namek, they returned back home. After a well-spent rest. It's time to train hard and diligent. Raditz was never so hardworking and diligent. But Gohan's hardworking and diligent attitude put huge pressure on him. Although one of the reasons Gohan was even able to be so hardworking and diligent was because Raditz had relieved Gohan of Chi-Chi's interference and goals to be a scholar. Raditz knew that Chi-Chi wanted Gohan to have a high-salary job that can bring money home to their family. Raditz managed to convince Chi-Chi that being a renowned martial artist would bring riches home to the family. The plan was naturally to defeat the androids once they start rampaging, and then appear on the news. Although that's what Chi-Chi thought. The truth was that Raditz planned to have them defeat Cell and not let Satan steal their credit. At least he knows just how rich Satan became because he became a world-renowned martial artist. And to do that, he needed to make sure Satan did not become the champion of the next WMA. Cell tournament was a necessity in order to stimulate the Z-Team's potential and prepare for Butte in the future. And even if they lose, Raditz was sure they could just wait till Cell leaves Earth, or after he destroys Earth and leaves the area. They could then ask the Namekians to help them restore Earth and revive them. The days passed one by one, like the river flowing and water trickling down a stream. Raditz worked extremely hard, he pushed his body to the extreme limits that his body even started collapsing. Gohan had been extremely worried after dragging an unconscious Raditz countless times to the rejuvenation tank. In a remote and desolate desert. Raditz roared in extreme anger. Boom! 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 Raditz threw punch after punch and devastated the desert. Numerous craters filled the desert. Why? I am already so strong. Raditz cried out in anger. Another year had passed since he summoned Shinron. His battle power had reached 9 million. Yet, he was still stuck in the pseudo-Super Saiyan state. Even Goku had already managed to transform into a Super Saiyan. After spending some time to learn and be able to freely transform at will, Goku was now following the same steps Gohan did and started to keep his Super Saiyan transformation in his daily life. As Raditz was venting his anger, he suddenly felt something moving above and turned his head up to look. A disc-shaped spaceship looking similar to Frieza's spaceship approached Earth. After half an hour it landed in the desert where Raditz stayed. The hatch opened and numerous aliens armed with scouters and beam guns disembarked the ship. The last to step out of the ship was a 3-meter-tall King Cold. King Cold had been confused over Frisia's disappearance. Luckily, he was able to find out that Frisia's spaceship had landed on Earth. But later the communication system stopped relaying any information. Little did he know, Dr. Brief had gradually dismantled Frisia's spaceship, thus rendered the ship's communication system useless. Worried about his little genius son that had been missing for 2 years now, King Cold had personally come to Earth to find his son. A Saiyan? Good. I know you're one of my son's subordinates. Saiyan, tell me, where is Frisia? Did something happen to his ship? King Cold saw Raditz with his Saiyan tail. Since Frisia planned to take care of Raditz on his own, he did not see the need for reporting such a trivial matter to his father. As such, King Cold did not know that Raditz had long since defected from Frisia Force. In fact, he did not believe anyone could harm Frisia. The worst he could possibly imagine was that their spaceship malfunctioning. Without any way to communicate nor leave the planet, they might simply be stuck on this backward planet called Earth. Raditz was in an extremely bad mood. Upon seeing King Cold and his army, Raditz found a target to vent his frustrations. Die. Without a warning, Raditz shot out an extremely wide ki wave from his palm. The ki wave engulfed all the men, King Cold, and the spaceship. The attack was too sudden and unexpected. King Cold had never expected that one of their own subordinates would attack him. Once the ki wave disappeared, only King Cold stood alone in the desert. His men and the spaceship had been destroyed. But simply relying on Raditz's 9 million battle power was not enough to harm King Cold. But his battle armor and cape were destroyed. Ah! You despicable ape! King Cold stared at the remains of his ship and men and screamed. King Cold shot out a barrage of ki blast at Raditz. Kaioken 30X. Raditz was not in the mood to play around, and after boosting his battle power to 270 million, he simply blasted King Cold to dust with a fan-shaped ki wave. Ah! That was a bit wasteful. Only after finishing venting did Raditz cool down his mind. He felt a great waste of resources for him to have so simply destroyed King Cold's spaceship. Raditz decided to take a break since he was getting too impatient and frustrated from training. Since it's been another year since he had summoned Shinran, Raditz collected all the Dragon Balls again. Raditz summoned Shinran. State your wish. Shinran said. I wish for my parents to be brought back to life. Raditz said. Shenron's red eyes shone for a brief moment. Unfortunately, I'm only able to bring back your mother to life. Do you still wish to continue your wish? Shenron said. Why? Why can't you bring back Bardock? Raditz asked. The Saiyan named Bardock has already reincarnated his spirit more than 200 years ago. Shenron said. More than 200 years ago. Don't tell me it's because Bardock traveled back in time. Raditz remembered the Dragon Ball movie about Bardock. During Planet Vegeta's explosion, somehow a space-time vortex sucked Bardock in and brought him back in time. Although it was unclear whether he simply went back in time in his timeline, or a new timeline was created. But either way, the first Bardock disappeared only for another Bardock to have appeared sometime long in the past. When Bardock fought Frisia's ancestor and became a Super Saiyan, that was how the Super Saiyan legend was born. Unfortunately, it was so many years ago, even before the Saiyans took over Planet Tefel and turned it into Planet Vegeta. Bardock had likely died of old age, a natural cause of death. This means that even if Bardock did not choose to reincarnate, Raditz would still not be able to revive him. Okay, then bring back Jine to life. Where would she appear? It won't be in where Planet Vegeta used to be, right? Raditz asked. If Jine really revived and appeared in space, she would suffocate and immediately die. Don't worry, the Saiyan named Jine has long since had her spirit brought to heaven. I'll reconstruct her body, but she will have to leave heaven on her own and come to Earth. Shenron stated. He could not do 2 wishes with a single wish. Okay, let's just do that then. Raditz planned to ask Cammy to help him bring Jine to Earth. Shenron's red eyes shone for a moment. Your wish has been granted. Farewell. Shenron said before he turned into a bright yellow light that split into 7 Dragon Balls and scattered across Earth. Raditz stood in the lookout, he was waiting for Cammy to bring back Jine from heaven. Time is running out. Should I use next year's wish to stop Cell? If I still can't attain Super Saiyan by then, I guess that's the best course of action. Raditz sighed. He has been stuck in the pseudo-Super Saiyan state for almost 2 years now. He had long since surpassed 400x gravity in the normal gravity chamber and switched to the improved model and was currently able to train in 500x gravity. His ki was lagging behind and he was pondering whether he should take some time to temper his spirit and ki meditate. Raditz was naturally nervous to meet his new mother. While waiting nervously for what felt like an eternity, Cammy finally came back with Jine in tow. Raditz. Jine noticed Raditz and quickly ran up to him and gave him a tight hug. Ah. Raditz was taken by surprise and froze. I missed you so much. My little boy has grown so much. Jine was tearing up. Tears dripped down her face. Mom. Raditz stammered and stiffly hugged Jine back. At that moment, Raditz felt like a huge burden in his heart had been lifted. It felt warm and comfortable in both his body and soul. As time passed, Raditz got more used to his new mother and began to talk about his experiences. He would of course not tell her that he had replaced her real son. Oh. Kakarot has also grown up. So he even has a son now. How great! He's even married. Jine clapped her hands happily. Cammy's mind had been tense when he brought the new Saiyan over, but after seeing her interactions with Raditz, his worries disappeared. He even wondered if Goku's family's bloodline was special, for each and every Saiyan in their family to be kind, unlike the evil Saiyans like Vegeta. Raditz didn't know why, but he felt more and more comfortable being with Jine and was now able to talk comfortably with his mother. Jine was especially happy that her 2 sons lived on Earth, a planet that was so peaceful or removed from all the killings. She was also very excited to meet Goku's family. Raditz finished talking and brought Jine with him and flew to Goku's home. This is? Goku felt a sense of familiarity once he saw Jine, but he could not remember where he had seen her before. But once he noticed Jine's Saiyan tail, he seemed to understand. Ah. Raditz, could this be your wife? Goku asked foolishly. But it couldn't be helped, Jine looked young. For one, she died young. But the main reason is that Saiyans keep their youthful appearance and are always in their best condition for battles. Only when they are very old will they quickly grow into an elderly appearance. Didn't I say all other Saiyans died out? Raditz's mouth twitched. Although Jine was as good as a stranger to him, he still did not have an Oedipus complex. Oh. Right. Then, who is she? Goku asked. Little fool. Kakarot, it's me, Jine. Your mother. Jine laughed and gave Goku a hug. Ah. Mom? Goku was shocked and hugged back. Goku did not feel awkward about suddenly meeting his mother. He was quite laid back and at ease. Rather, it was Chi-Chi that was more nervous. Gee, greetings. Mother-in-law. Chi-Chi quickly bowed twice in panic. She's my grandma? But she looks so young. Gohan said confused. Silly child. We Saiyans maintain our youthful appearances until around 80 years old. This is in order to be in our peak state so we can do our best in battles. Only at that time will we rapidly age to an elderly appearance. Jine rubbed Gohan and gently explained. You until 80? You're able to keep your youth until you're 80? I'm so envious. Chi-Chi rubbed her face, looking for any possible wrinkles. Raditz had a speechless look and wondered why the girls in the Dragon Ball world always complained about them aging and growing older. Yet they never used the Dragon Balls to wish for eternal youth. It didn't take long for Jine to integrate into their family. Jine and Chi-Chi started chatting while Goku soon got bored. You want to be called Goku? Okay, that is fine. I'm just happy you're still alive. You look just like your father. Jine caressed Goku's face. Big brother said the same. Goku nodded. Jine started living with them. It was time to expand the house. It was a very simple job since everyone was abnormally strong. They cut some stones from big boulders and mountains, and some trees and made it into planks. After hammering and gluing everything, a big mansion-sized house was erected. Even though they taught Jine martial arts and invited her to train in the gravity chambers, Jine did not have much of an interest in fighting. She would only occasionally work out as if to just exercise her body. Now that I think about it. Jine is Mom is obviously a righteous Saiyan. +1 righteous Saiyan. Pity, Bardock can't be brought back. Otherwise, it would be +2. Raditz thought. Raditz was not in a hurry to begin training again. Gravity training had slowed down, it became harder and harder to improve now that he was training under 500x gravity. And the little gains in strength could not compare to the Super Saiyan transformation. The Kaioken would get more and more redundant due to its high strain on its user's body. For each heartbeat they multiply their ki. Although the Super Saiyan state does strain the body, but once you train and master the Super Saiyan state, there would barely be any strain on the user's body. Raditz spent his days with Jine, sometimes taking her on a tour around the mountains, sometimes to a nearby town or village. Jine really liked the peaceful atmosphere. Of course, her Saiyan's definition of peace was similar but also somewhat different from humans. Once, when they were in a small town, a pickpocketer tried to pickpocket Jine, only to end up getting strangled by her tail and thrashed and sent to the police. That was her way of handling the thief in a peaceful manner. The reason Raditz spent so much time with Jine was not that he liked her, but rather that he felt peaceful and comfortable in his heart and mind. Before he knew it, he had spent 3 months skipping training and only stayed with Jine daily. "Ah!" Raditz exclaimed. On this day, Raditz no longer felt the comfortable feeling when he stayed next to Jine. "What the heck have I been doing?" Raditz felt he had really wasted his time to skip 3 months of training. That means there was less than a year left until the Android saga starts. But, there has been some kind of change. In my mind? Or soul? Raditz felt his mind had turned clearer as compared to before the 3 months. Raditz sat down and entered meditation. My spirit has grown? No, wait. It's actually Raditz's soul that has disappeared? Did I swallow his soul? Raditz suddenly noticed his spirit had grown much bigger as compared to before. But the parts that were more foreign to him, which represented the old Raditz's soul, had disappeared. In the past, he could inspect the old Raditz's soul and browse his memories, but now they were all gone. He couldn't find the old Raditz's soul anymore. The memories seemed to have also been transferred to him. He no longer needed to browse the memories, but could simply recall them with a single thought as if they were his own memories. Everything happened after I met Jine. Could it be that the old Raditz's soul's obsession was to meet his family? Although I did not meet Bardock, Goku looks really similar, so he could have maybe substituted for Bardock? Now that I've fulfilled his wishes, did he let go of everything? Raditz speculated. When he first met Goku, the old Raditz's emotions were so overwhelming when he talked about his parents that he even teared up. The same thing happened when Raditz met Jine. Raditz speculated that the comfortable feeling he felt when he spent time with Jine was actually the old Raditz's soul letting go of everything and passed it all over to him. The old Raditz's soul had turned into pure soul energy and nurtured his soul. And only today did he finish absorbing all of the pure soul energy. He would now no longer be influenced by the old Raditz's emotions. I have the feeling that I've become stronger. Raditz looked confused, he clenched his fist a few times. Raditz measured his battle power and was stunned. It had shot up from 9 million to 10 million. Even though he had not trained at all since he reached 9 million in battle power. It's real. Then, why do I feel so confident that I can become a Super Saiyan right now? Raditz muttered in shock. Raditz would naturally not destroy his own training room. Knowing that the first few transformations would be very unstable and the energy would be uncontrollably leaking out to the surroundings, Raditz flew to Gizzard Wasteland. A place devoid of life, filled with cliffs, rocks, and sand. This was Gizzard Wasteland. A nervous Raditz landed in this desolate place. Raditz took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. He hoped his confidence was real. The confidence that stems from his heart just came out of nowhere. But he would rather have blind belief in himself than give up on becoming a Super Saiyan. I don't want to just be a cannon fodder, a side character that can be dismissed with a single thought. I have already changed the story. I can also become a Super Saiyan. Raditz thought of the original Raditz's fate, Nappa's fate. Everything had changed. This timeline no longer followed the original storyline. Hi-ya-way-ya. Having done this countless times already, it only took Raditz a moment to transition into pseudo-Super Saiyan. His veins were popping out, but he stayed focused. His ki continued increasing rapidly, a large part leaked out and spread to his surrounding. The ground rumbled and shook. The ground under Raditz's feet within 10 meters sunk in and cracked. The golden aura wrapping around Raditz intensified like a raging flame. Raditz's long hair was pulled upwards halfway and turned golden blonde. His black pupils turned blue. He had finally become a Super Saiyan. Ha-ya. Aya-wa-wa. His strength was draining rapidly. Raditz kept holding on with all his might, just to keep the transformation going. His veins kept popping in and out, beads of sweat dripped down his face like a waterfall, not only soaking his clothes, but also slowly trying to fill up the huge crater under his feet. Raditz's ki kept rising higher and higher as if there was no limits to his potentials. His ki continued increasing until lightning crackled and wrapped around his golden Super Saiyan aura. Crackle! Crackle! Just as the bluish lightning appeared, Raditz lost all his strength, the transformation was undone and he reverted back. His golden blonde hair reverted back to black and fell down, his blue pupils turned into black again. With all his physical strength drained, Raditz fell weakly to the ground on his back. Ha! Ha! Raditz panted heavily. I did it! Ha ha ha! Raditz laughed weakly. Because he was so focused on keeping the transformation, he did not notice the lightning crackle during the last moment of his Super Saiyan transformation. Only after resting for over an hour, did Raditz get back on his feet and stand up. I only managed to keep my transformation for a few seconds, maybe not even 5 seconds. But, I really did it. Raditz smiled. He was still too exhausted and tired to try transforming again. Using the little bit of strength he had left, he slowly levitated up and floated back home. The next day, Raditz had fully rested and was brimming with vigor and excitement. He once again appeared on Gizzard Wasteland. This time he managed to keep his Super Saiyan state for 3 seconds. I think I just saw something? No, my mind must be playing tricks on me. Raditz felt like he saw something bluish streak past his body, he even felt like he heard something crackle. But the only thing he could think of was lightning. But that was just too unbelievable, Raditz quickly dismissed his delusions. Days after days passed, Raditz continued training to control his Super Saiyan transformation. As he got more and more used to the transformation, he would not use brute force to keep it going. He kept making small adjustments, both emotionally and physically. Even the way he rotated his ki around his body was slowly making small changes to conform with his Super Saiyan transformation. 1 month, 2 months. 6 months went by. Even though the gains he made were little, Raditz still saw the improvement and did not lose his motivation. The time he was able to keep up his transformation increased little by little. From 3 seconds to 4 seconds, 5 seconds. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. After 6 months, Raditz was able to keep his transformation for 20 seconds. But he was not disheartened, but rather overjoyed. Lightning crackled, numerous blue-colored arcs of lightning wrapped around Raditz. This many lightning arcs are way too many for a Super Saiyan 2, this is obviously Super Saiyan 3. And this endless ki and power coursing through my body. Raditz felt so exhilarated every time he transformed into a full-power Super Saiyan. The transformation immediately ceased and Raditz reverted back. The truth was that he could not keep up the full-power Super Saiyan. Once his Super Saiyan transformation was moved up to full power, it just took him 1 second to drain all of his strength. The reason Raditz spent 6 months to reach this stage was because if he doesn't actively control his Super Saiyan state, it will automatically be moved up to full power. In the beginning, he could only keep his transformation for 3 seconds, there was barely any time for Raditz to get a feel of his Super Saiyan state. And he would also be completely exhausted and needed to rest the whole day to recover. Even though Raditz had heavily relied on the rejuvenation tanks to recover quicker, he still spent 6 months to reach this stage. He could now transition between half-power and full-power Super Saiyan. The half-power was what Raditz believed was equal to Super Saiyan 2, and the full power was equal to Super Saiyan 3. Next is to train the normal Super Saiyan state. Raditz actually got his priority reversed, he should have normally began to control and weaken his Super Saiyan state to the limit and get used to being in the Super Saiyan state for as long as possible and acquire the mastered Super Saiyan state. But Raditz's Super Saiyan transformation was just too magical and wonderful, he just couldn't help but try to find the limits of his Super Saiyan power. But not everything was his fault. Goku and Gohan's first few crude Super Saiyan transformations was not so difficult to control, Raditz had just been too focused on getting to know his limits, but he was never able to keep up the full-powered Super Saiyan state and before he knew it, 6 months had already passed. But all of it wasn't a waste. Raditz smiled. But seriously, my Super Saiyan 1 is equal to Super Saiyan 3? Raditz was overjoyed. I remember always saying that if Raditz could become a Super Saiyan, he would look just as if he had transformed into a Super Saiyan 3. Don't tell me it's because of Raditz's long hair that my Super Saiyan transformation is so strong? Or, is this also part of my transmigration perk? Just like how I can control my Great Ape transformation without any training. Raditz could obviously just cut his hair to find out. But he thought it was quite stupid. If it really was so, that his Super Saiyan power was dependent on his hair length, he would lose out since a pure-blooded Saiyon's hair doesn't grow out. Raditz spent 3 months keeping his Super Saiyan state to the lowest power, trying to master his Super Saiyan state. He didn't manage to master it, but he made great improvements and could better handle his Super Saiyan state. Maybe due to his abnormal Super Saiyan transformation, everything regarding his Super Saiyan state seemed much harder to improve and master. Raditz obviously wouldn't acknowledge himself as talentless. Raditz in his Super Saiyan state held a big bag filled with 40 senzu beans. He would occasionally eat a senzu bean to keep his transformation. Yes, he was being wasteful. But there wasn't much need in using senzu beans for training anymore, now that they had rejuvenation tanks. Senzu beans were only useful in real battles. Since Korin was doing his best to produce as many senzu beans as possible, there was naturally a surplus of senzu beans. Raditz did not believe the Z-Team needed over 40 senzu beans just for the Android Saga and Cell Saga. Of course, Raditz only dared to hold 40 senzu beans in his hands when he's not in combat. He had learned his lessons during the battle on planet Namek. Raditz had spent 2 weeks flying around various forested areas and even scouted the surrounding forests of Ginger Town, but he still could not find Cell's time machine. He knew that once Bulma and Trunks find the time machine, it would probably get taken away, so no one will be allowed to use it. Raditz didn't have any plans to use the time machine either, but it wouldn't hurt to be more prepared. Raditz had spent a few days to recall the original storyline. It was only very far into the future after Buu Saga that future Trunks would come again, and that would only be on his own time machine. Raditz didn't think it was feasible for him to steal future Trunks' time machine. Thus, Raditz was searching for Cell's time machine. That's too bad. I had wanted to use the Dragon Balls to either regrow my hair or refill the time machine's energy. Raditz said in disappointment. He was naturally curious to know whether his Super Saiyan power was equal to a Super Saiyan 3 simply because his hair made him look as if he really was in a Super Saiyan 3 state. He wouldn't cut off his hair unless he could have it regrown in a short time. The Android Saga was just about to be upon the Z-Team, he would not foolishly weaken himself in such a critical time. The other possible wish was for him to refuel the time machine so it would be ready to be used when there was the need. But now Raditz could only choose to collect the Dragon Balls and ask Shinron to help him find the time machine instead. Raditz spent some time collecting the Dragon Balls and had Shinron teleport him to the time machine's location. Looks like I need to spend another wish to repair the time machine. Raditz looked at the big hole in the glass cover of the time machine. Raditz wiped the moss covering the surface of the time machine and found the button to turn it into a capsule. Poof! White smoke engulfed the time machine. Once the smoke dispersed, only a tiny capsule remained. Raditz picked up the capsule and flew to his training room. He wouldn't dare to hold valuable items in case they would be destroyed or lost in a battle. Time quickly passed. Raditz continued on mastering his Super Saiyan state every single day. He also did not forget Jine. Since Jine did not like to train, Raditz decided to take a trip to see his Tree of Might. It had been 3 years now, he hoped there would be a nice harvest. Though, he wasn't sure if eating any would still bring him any gains in power with his current battle power. At least it was useful for Jine. He might also gift a few fruits to Tien Shinhan if he has any leftovers. It didn't matter where he was, he would always be in the state of training as long as he can keep his Super Saiyan state active. Raditz spent 5 days flying to the small brown dwarf planet. Oh. Looks like I'll need to find a better planet. The brown dwarf planet had basically been sucked dry by the Tree of Might. The dwarf planet was about to be completely destroyed, although Raditz could ask Shinron to restore the planet, it was just too small and useless. Shinron couldn't improve nor create a new planet, but it could fully restore a planet. So Raditz was more interested in finding a bigger and filled with more nutrition and life force. That way the Tree of Might would be able to grow for a long time without him needing to constantly restore the planet. Let's pay a visit to one of Frisia's bases and grab their database. Raditz decided to pay a visit to planet Frisia 79 after Cell Saga. Frisia Force had an enormous database of all the planets they had scouted. It was much more efficient to rely on their huge database to find a suitable planet for him to plant the Tree of Might. Maybe if it was in the past, while he still was weak, Raditz would have hesitated whether to exterminate the natives and occupy the planet to be exclusively his garden. But now, with his current strength, Raditz felt little to no enticement from the Tree of Might. That's why he would rather look for a planet devoid of living beings. Raditz picked up 10 ripe fruits. Once he pulled out the tree and had it return to its seed form, the dwarf planet crumbled apart. Raditz hurriedly got on his spaceship and flew back to Earth. Since flying on the spaceship was also training for him, he was in no hurry to teleport back to Earth. Raditz ate one fruit and after measuring his battle power, found out that the fruit had only increased his battle power by 10,000. He lost all interest in the fruit. Maybe if he can harvest a few thousand fruits each year, would he be interested? 20 fruits would only equal 200,000 battle power if the fruits would not give even more diminishing returns. Once he arrived back at home, Raditz gave Jine a single fruit. Considering how weak Jine was, a single fruit was more than enough for her. She might even waste a bit of its energy already. After Jine ate the fruit, Raditz scanned her battle power, it had increased to 33,000. Jine's battle power used to be over 3,000, she did not gain the whole 50,000 battle power and only managed to absorb 60% of the energy. Raditz left 3 fruits with Jine, telling her only to eat one fruit at a time and only after she had fully digested the energy contained in the previous fruit. Beep. 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 Suddenly, Raditz's cell phone beeped. Ah. That's right. I almost forgot. It's time for the WMA to begin. Raditz patted his head. It was time to participate in the WMA and make sure that Satan does not win and become the champion. Raditz wanted to like a leisurely life, and who wouldn't want to be rich if they could? There was just so much mouth-watering food he wanted to eat. It couldn't be helped since they ate just so much. Just thinking of all the delicious food, Raditz's mouth started salivating. He quickly wiped away the saliva on his lips. Of course, the other reason was that he had promised Chi-Chi, so one of their family just had to win and become the champion. It was part of becoming a renowned martial artist. Only by being famous would cash start to roll in. It could be to be hired to shoot a commercial or receive the World Peace Prize for saving the world. But to do that, they had to be famous. Satan was the champion in the original storyline, that was why he could use his fame to trick people into believing he defeated Cell. The agreement Raditz made with Chi-Chi was for them to earn a ton of money this year. If he wasn't able to do that, Chi-Chi would forbid Gohan from training again. Raditz decided to invite everyone in the Z-Team in order to make the WMA exciting and to make sure the people on Earth would not think their future fights would be mere tricks. Like hanging on thin invisible threads to fly and detonate bombs to shoot out ki blasts. What? Participate in the WMA? The androids will appear in just 5 days. Piccolo was surprised by Raditz's invitation. Sure. I would love to see just how much I have improved. Big brother, I want to fight you in the WMA. Goku said excitedly. I'll show everyone just how much I've improved. Gohan said happily. Goku was so excited that he teleported to invite the others in the Z-Team. Raditz had originally planned to do just that, but seeing that Goku had already left, Raditz just shrugged his shoulders. Raditz gave a call to Bulma to invite her to watch the WMA. Are you serious? You guys are going to play around? The androids are just around the corner. Bulma reprimanded. Maybe because the Z-Team just had to let the androids be created, that Bulma felt so nervous and panicky. If only the Z-Team had been willing to follow her suggestion to kill Dr. Gero before he had created the androids. Come on. There are only 5 days left, it's not like we can make any improvement in only 5 days. Raditz said dismissively. Raditz, Goku, Gohan, Piccolo, and Jine flew through the sky. Chi-Chi never learned to really control ki, so she sat on Goku's flying Nimbus. When they landed on Papaya Island, Bulma, Yamcha, Puar, Oolong, and Vegeta were already there. Hey, Vegeta is wearing Kame School's training GI. Goku said in surprise. Vegeta was apparently wearing the same orange training clothes as himself and Yamcha. Gohan was wearing Piccolo-style purple GI, while Raditz wore blue training GI. Vegeta scowled upon hearing Goku. He had specially come to join the WMA just to experience Gohan's strength. Since neither Goku nor Raditz had mentioned that they had become Super Saiyans, Vegeta's only focus was Gohan. Vegeta never learned that the Super Saiyan was just a transformation. Raditz had also reverted back in order to conserve his stamina for the tournament. Everyone greeted each other joyfully except Vegeta, who stood at the corner with a scowl on his face. Raditz and his group went forward and registered for the tournament. Tien Shinhan, Kaiatsu, Nappa and Launch arrived while they were still registering. Nappa was wearing a green doogie just like Tien Shinhan. And a blue-haired Launch was holding onto a baby in her bosom. Raditz, couldn't you have told us ahead of the tournament? Tien Shinhan jokingly complained. Sorry, I forgot all about it as well. If not for my cell phone's alarm I would have missed the WMA. Raditz said. Tien Shinhan. Congratulations. You got a baby. Goku said with a smile. It's not mine. Tien Shinhan said awkwardly. Although the blonde launch had always been chasing him, he never liked her law-breaking personality. Ever since he stopped doing evil, he has had a great dislike toward evilness. Don't tell me it's Nappa's kid? Raditz had a dumbfounded look, stared at Nappa. Ahahaha. You got me. Nappa laughed proudly. Nappa was big and burly like a gorilla. The blonde launch has strange taste for manly and muscular men. Once she set her eyes on Nappa, she would always rob and threaten others to make a sumptuous banquet for Nappa. It brought a great headache for Tien Shinhan, but for Nappa, it was great. He had no qualms about launch robbing and kidnapping 5-star chefs to make his meals every day. In fact, her actions were more in line with his personality. The food on Earth was so much better than the crude meals he has had for his entire life. He couldn't have enough of all the mouth-watering food made by the best 5-star chefs in the world. Nappa, who used to be a subordinate, was now treated like a king by Launch really enjoyed his current life. I don't have the talent to become a Super Saiyan, the martial arts on Earth is just too complicated. He. Vegeta told me that with Gohan as an example, it is likely that all Saiyan hybrids mixed with Earthling blood had great potential. Gohan, just wait till my kid becomes a Super Saiyan. Ha ha ha. Nappa laughed and patted Gohan's shoulder. It was unknown whether Nappa liked Launch or that he simply liked her treatment. But more than anything, he most likely just wanted a Saiyan hybrid kid. Is it fine to say that in front of Launch? Raditz thought and glanced at the blue-haired Launch who was smiling gently back at him. Tien Shinhan, Kaiatsu and Nappa registered for the WMA. The registration is closing in 5 minutes. The staff responsible for registering participants shouted. Man, when is Krillin coming? He's going to miss the registration. Yamcha said. 1 minute left. The staff yelled. Weigh in it. I'm here. Krillin flew down from the sky, panting heavily. Krillin quickly finished registering, walked up to Raditz. Raditz. I almost came late. Couldn't you tell me ahead next time? Krillin was still panting. Don't fret it, you made it. Raditz said nonchalantly. The Z-team passed the preliminaries in a breeze. A single slap sent their opponent flying out of the ring. The only unlucky contestant was Vegeta's opponent who had all his bones broken and sent to the hospital. Raditz did not know how they could afford to treat all the contestants that passed the preliminaries to eat their fill. But now with Raditz, Goku, Gohan, Nappa, and Vegeta, the 5 Saiyans were emptying their restaurant. Krillin, Yamcha, and Tien Shinhan with their faces flushed with embarrassment were distancing from them as if they were strangers. Meanwhile, Piccolo, with a flushed face slowly sipped on a glass of water. Master Roshi and a young blonde teenage girl managed to arrive in time before the tournament began. From the audience's seats, the blonde girl shouted, Go, go, go. My cute prince. Beat them all up and take the championship. Shut your trap. Vegeta looked embarrassed. Ahahaha. Cute prince? Krillin laughed. Grr. Pray you won't meet me in the tournament. Vegeta directed his killing intent at Krillin and gave him a chill in the spine. The blonde teenage girl was Eri. She came from a big family, although her family was wealthy, her life was restricted. She never got to leave the sphere of her family's influence. One day, with the help of the house butler, she managed to escape and run from home. Just as she arrived in a small town, she got abducted by a bunch of human traffickers. Just as she was despairingly watching the men rip off her clothes and unbuckling their pants, her Prince Charming came flying down from the sky and saved her. Then he asked, Are you willing to live with me on a small island in the sea? Eri stuck out her tongue and with a bright smile, waved her hands vigorously at Vegeta. Wee-hee. So energetic. Master Roshi licked his lips and grabbed Eri's butt that was shaking as she vigorously waved her arms. Bang! Eri pulled out an iron baseball bat from who knows where and smashed Master Roshi's head so hard the metal bat deformed. Then she threw the bat away. Clang clang. Eri's movement was fluid as if she had done this hundreds of times already. Everyone was surprised that there was a junior division. In the past, the tournament had no adult division and junior division, everyone regardless of their age fought in the same tournament. Even in the last tournament, the 23rd WMA did not separate kids. But now, anyone under the age of 15 could only join the junior division. It was too bad for Gohan, he was still only 10 years old and could only join the junior division. Everyone leisurely watched until the junior division ended. A little girl named Videl fought Gohan in the finals. Gohan naturally won, Videl ended up crying. Gohan comforted Videl before he went up and received the prize money. The junior division's prize money was a pitiful 100,000 zeni. It looked more like a consolation prize than prize money when compared to the adult division's 5 million zeni. This time's WMA prize money was actually 5 million zeni, it was 10 times that of the previous WMA prize money. Even Chi-Chi's eyes were glowing in gold. Of course, some did not even bother watching the junior division. Goku, Nappa, and Vegeta continued wolfing down their meals in the dining hall. The adult division finally started. Guys, let's play fair. What do you say, we won't be using any senzu beans after the fight? Krillin suggested. Yeah. That sounds great. Yamcha hurriedly agreed. You're only saying that because you two still haven't learned to use Kaioken, right? Raditz rolled his eyes. Though, the only reason he said that was because he felt he would lose out if he were to use his abnormal Super Saiyan transformation early. I'm okay with that. Tien Shinhan nodded. Although he would likely suffer much if he were to use Kaioken early in the tournament. There were 16 contestants that passed the preliminaries and entered the tournament. Raditz, Goku, Piccolo, Tien Shinhan, Kaiatsu, Nappa, Krillin, Yamcha, and Vegeta occupied 9 spots already. The remaining 6 contestants were Ramo, Pinter, Spopovich, Mr. Satan, Jewel, Killa, and Mighty Mask. The matches were decided by picking lots. Raditz vs Mighty Mask. Yamcha vs Ramo. Krillin vs Killa. Mr. Satan vs Spopovich. Tien Shinhan vs Pinter. Vegeta vs Jewel. Kaiatsu vs Nappa. Goku vs Piccolo. The first match began. Raditz stepped up on the arena, his opponent was a weirdo dressed in a costume-like mask with a pointy top, covered his face down to his shoulders with a long cape. Raditz stood with his arms crossed, the match began and Mighty Mask ran to Raditz with a punch. Raditz couldn't even be bothered to take out his arms, his tail smacked Mighty Mask with a crisp sound, sent him out of the arena. The second match, Yamcha vs Ramo. Ramo was a dark-skinned muscular man with an afro. Yamcha showed off and toyed with Ramo before knocking him out. Then he waved at the audience. The third match, Krillin vs Killa. Killa was a muscular, dark-skinned man with his arms covered in white bandages. Little fellow, you should just give up. Killa looked at the short and small Krillin in contempt. Don't look down on me just because I'm short. Krillin got ticked. Everyone always looked down on him because of his short height. Krillin really liked to show off. He let Killa attack him without counterattacking back. He simply dodged all of Killa's punches and kicks with ease, he even closed his eyes. This is impossible. Killa continued attacking until he was all drenched in sweat and panting. Humph. You shouldn't have looked down on me. Krillin appeared behind Killa and kicked him in the butt, sending him down the arena. The fourth match, Mr. Satan vs Spopovich. Mr. Satan jumped up on the arena and started showing off his martial arts. He jumped and kicked, punched out a flurry of fists and kicks in the air until he started panting. He then turned around and faced the audience and raised his arm as if to ask the audience to cheer. The audience seemed to have been captivated by Mr. Satan's quick punches and kicks and started cheering for him. Spopovich was a red-haired big and tall muscular man that looked like a wrestler. Seriously? That cheap stunt was enough to captivate the audience. Raditz was speechless. Although the earlier matches were of higher level, none of it was actually shown since the battles ended one-sidedly. The match began, Spopovich was like a big dumb muscular oaf, rushed forward and swung widely his fists with all his strength so badly he lost balance after a few swings and fell to the floor. Mr. Satan easily dodged all of Spopovich's attacks. Once Spopovich fell, Mr. Satan appeared behind Spopovich and kicked him out of the arena. #%at. What the heck? Is that big oaf just a bodybuilder or what? What kind of idiot swings his whole body forward with his punch and falls? Raditz ridiculed Spopovich, who didn't even know how to punch correctly, yet entered the WMA. The fifth match, Tien Shinhan vs Pinter. Pinter was a giant fatty, Tien Shinhan's height only reached his waist. Tien Shinhan did not play around and finished the fight in an instant. The sixth match, Vegeta vs. Jewel. Jewel was a handsome blonde young man. He held a red rose between his fingers, looked at the audience and winked. Numerous women were charmed and started cheering and confessing to him. Unfortunately for him, Vegeta simply punched Jewel in the face and sent him crashing into the wall. His face was ruined and sent to the hospital. The seventh match, Kaiatsu vs. Nappa. Both of them bowed before they began fighting. Raditz had thought Kaiatsu would win. But after a long drawn-out fight, they switched to ki attacks and Chiatsu ended up losing the match. Nappa's ki blast almost hit the audience. Tien Shinhan had hurriedly appeared in front of the audience and deflected the ki blast, sending it to the sky before it detonated. All of the audience were staring dumbfoundedly at the explosion in the sky. This time, there was no one shouting tricks. Nappa looked as if he had made a big achievement by defeating Kaiatsu, only to receive an earful from Tien Shinhan. Vegeta looked angrily at Kaiatsu as if he wanted to find faults with Kaiatsu for losing. Vegeta had wanted to get his revenge from last time, but now it wasn't possible anymore. The eighth match, Goku vs. Piccolo. As Goku was the previous WMA's champion, there were lots of cheering once Goku stepped on the arena. Goku was really excited, even though Goku and Piccolo sparred almost every day. The two started fighting intensely. After a few minutes, their clothes were filled with holes. Piccolo spat out some blood and took off his turban and weighted cape. Goku also took off his weighted clothes. The two resumed the fight. I really don't understand why they would fight with weights on first, only to later remove them. All you gained was some additional injuries. Raditz looked weirdly at the duo. This battle was the most exciting one as of yet. All the audience cheered crazily, shouting from the top of their lungs. Goku! Don't hold back. Pluck out Piccolo's antennae. Bite him. You must win. Chi-Chi started shouting scary things. Piccolo seemed to hold back, but even so, he was piling up small injuries on Goku. For every 5 hits, Goku managed to put in 1 hit. Goku, let's get serious, said Piccolo. All right. Ha-ya. Goku nodded and transformed into a Super Saiyan. His ki multiplied many times over. Piccolo's ki also multiplied. He had activated Kaioken. Piccolo had been leading the fight, was now starting to lose. Piccolo's ki is really big. Raditz exclaimed. Piccolo's ki was more than half of Goku's current ki. If he could strengthen his body some more, he would be able to use a stronger Kaioken and maybe match Goku for a short while. Piccolo was losing the fight, pulled back and created some distance between him and Goku. He quickly fired his signature attack, the special beam cannon. Goku blocked the attack with a Kamehameha. They were in a stalemate for a while, until Goku increased the output of the Kamehameha and overwhelmed the special beam cannon. Piccolo surrendered. Goku looked a little exhausted after the Kamehameha. Piccolo's special beam cannon was really strong and took a great deal of his ki. All the audience cheered. This was the best and most exciting battle they had seen. Though, many were discussing about Goku transforming into a golden warrior. The next 4 matches were Raditz vs. Yamcha, Krillin vs. Mr. Satan, Tien Shinhan vs. Vegeta, Chiatsu vs. Goku. After a short recession, the next match began. The first match, Raditz vs. Yamcha. Sigh. I guess this is goodbye to the prize money. Yamcha sighed. Even so, he did not surrender before the match began. They had a short spar, but after a while, Raditz felt it was a waste of time and kicked Yamcha out of the ring. The second match, Krillin vs. Mr. Satan. Mr. Satan once again tried to show off, but this time the audience booed. Krillin generously allowed Mr. Satan to punch him once. But who knew, even before Krillin was done talking, Mr. Satan punched his chin. Krillin was still talking, his tongue stuck out when his chin was hit, he bit his tongue badly and bled. Krillin was really angry and took out his anger on Mr. Satan's face. After a whole minute, Mr. Satan's face was swollen like a balloon. Why? You said I could punch you. Mr. Satan cried out with injustice. Krillin felt embarrassed and quickly kicked him out of the arena. The third match, Tien Shinhan vs. Vegeta. Vegeta roared and attacked Tien Shinhan. Eri was cheering for her prince, but Vegeta couldn't hear her. And it was unknown whether he would have cared. Tien Shinhan had become really strong. He had been working really hard since Raditz took him and everyone else to King Kai's planet. He learned the Kaioken, he also trained in the gravity chamber. Then, he learned Yardration's meditation techniques. Each and every one of those things had greatly benefited his training. Unfortunately, Vegeta did not know Kaioken, otherwise, he would have been able to force Tien Shinhan to also use Kaioken against him. Tien Shinhan dominated the battle. Vegeta got angry and attacked with his Big Bang attack. Its explosion range catch the majority of the audience in the attack. Tien Shinhan quickly activated Kaioken and deflected the attack far into the distance. After a loud explosion, a small mushroom-shaped cloud of smoke appeared in the distance. The audience were shell-shocked. That attack drained all of Vegeta's ki. Tien Shinhan was very upset with Vegeta's attitude of disregarding the innocent audience. He did not hold back and beat him up really badly. Even though the others had also used ki attacks, none of them attacked in a way that would let the audience get caught in their attacks. Well, except for the stupid Nappa. Eri ran up and held the unconscious Vegeta. She stared angrily at Tien Shinhan. Somehow, she did not seem to have minded or had simply ignored the fact that the Big Bang attack's explosion range would have also caught her in it. The fourth match, Nappa vs Goku. Nappa couldn't even touch Goku's clothes. The difference was just so big. It was like a game of chase. Goku easily dodged around and played for a while before he sent Nappa out of the ring. The quarterfinals. Raditz vs Krillin. Tien Shinhan vs Goku. The first match, Raditz vs Krillin. There was no need to say anything. Krillin simply surrendered the match. The second match, Tien Shinhan vs Goku. Tien Shinhan did not beat around the bush, he activated 5x Kaioken. An incredible ki appeared, although it was smaller than Piccolo's ki, it was not something Goku could dismiss. Goku had no choice but transform into a Super Saiyan. The Kaioken was too much of a burden to Goku since he was conserving his strength for the final to fight Raditz. They fought intensively and brought the battle to the sky. The difference was too big between a 5x Kaioken Tien Shinhan and Super Saiyan Goku. Tien Shinhan switched the battle to ki attacks and fired his signature attack, the Kikaho. Tien Shinhan's Kikaho was really strong. Once Tien Shinhan finished firing 6 Kikaho, the whole arena was gone, replaced by a deep and endless square pit. Since it wasn't a life and death battle, Tien Shinhan did not burn his life force to continue firing more Kikaho. The Kikaho was truly an overpowered attack unless one was on guard before, or the difference in power was just too great. Once hit by the first Kikaho, one would stay as a helpless target until the attacker finishes all his Kikaho attacks. Goku slowly made his way out of the pit, he floated up. His orange GI had turned into rags, with blood painting his body. Tien Shinhan had exhausted all his ki, the Kaioken had deactivated. But Goku was still a Super Saiyan, his ki had dropped considerably, but a Super Saiyan was nonetheless still powerful. Tien Shinhan sighed and surrendered. Raditz was curious that if Tien Shinhan had fired over 10 Kikaho attacks, would Goku even still be alive by then? The final match, Raditz vs Goku. Raditz felt a bit bad, seeing how Goku was all bloodied and exhausted from the previous matches, while he had been breezing through his matches. Goku knew his condition well, he knew he could not fight for long, his stamina and physical strength was drained from the previous fight with Piccolo and Tien Shinhan. And his body was filled with injuries, especially from Tien Shinhan's incredible 5x Kaioken Kikaho. Goku started the match by transforming into a Super Saiyan. Raditz also became a Super Saiyan. Goku was just in too much of a disadvantage from his previous matches, Raditz easily dominated the fight and knocked out Goku. It was unknown whether Chi-Chi was just being polite to Raditz, or because her mother-in-law, Jine, sat beside her, or because they were all living together as a big family, thus it didn't matter who won the prize money. But Chi-Chi didn't cheer nor shout to either Raditz or Goku during the match. After training for 3 months trying hard to master the Super Saiyan state, Raditz could now stay in the Super Saiyan state with the lowest power for 2 minutes, the half power for 10 seconds, and full power for just a measly 1 second. Of course, the time for each state is when Raditz is in his peak condition. Bang! Vegeta punched the wall. He was at first confused by Goku's transformation, his golden hair and sudden spike in ki. But after seeing Raditz do the same transformation, he understood that this was the Super Saiyan transformation. Vegeta was in a foul mood after learning that all 3 of Goku's family had become Super Saiyans. A mid-class warrior had become a Super Saiyan, even a low-class warrior had become a Super Saiyan. Even a halfling Saiyan with a much weaker Saiyan heritage was a Super Saiyan. Yet he, the super elite class warrior, the Prince of Science, was not a Super Saiyan. Vegeta was still all banged up and weak. But he disregarded Eri, who was supporting him, and slowly floated away. Let us give our champion a round of applause. The announcer, clad in black costume and black shades, spoke into the mic. This is Raditz, the big brother of the previous WMA champion, Son Goku. And the Junior Division's champion, Son Gohan, is also Goku's son. Their whole family is a family of champions. The announcer said excitedly. The announcer then handed over a paper bag filled with 5 million zenny. Everyone clapped and cheered. It was their most exciting WMA they had ever seen. Chi-Chi was especially clapping hard and excited upon seeing Raditz receive the paper bag. At least now they won't mistake Gohan's name for a meal during Cell Tournament, thought Raditz. Gohan was now well known to many people. The TV announcer filming the Cell Tournament won't now think Gohan is a lunch boy. Seeing that Chi-Chi was looking fanatically at the paper bag in his hand, Raditz took out 1 million zenny and put it in his clothes. Then handed over the paper bag to Chi-Chi, who hugged the money joyfully. Seriously, aren't you a princess? Lampooned Raditz inwardly. Mr. Satan was staring at Raditz, Goku, and Gohan with stars in his eyes. Great champion! Please teach me your martial arts. Mr. Satan went down on his knees and begged. Raditz ignored him and left. Mr. Satan then turned around to beg to Goku. Sorry, but we're kinda busy saving the world, said Goku. Clearly thinking of the androids that were coming in 5 days. I'm willing to pay 50,000 zenny in tuition fees. Mr. Satan bowed so deep his forehead hit the ground. Goku! Quickly accept him. Why didn't I think of this? We're a family of martial artists. Why didn't we think of opening a dojo? Chi-Chi pushed past the crowd and pulled Goku. But Chi-Chi, we don't have time to open a dojo right now. In 5 days, Goku scratched his head. It's fine. Saving the world can wait. You need to put food on the table. Chi-Chi said decisively. But don't we have the prize money? Goku asked confused. Since Raditz had won 5 million zenny. As long as they used it sparingly, it would last their big family of 5 a long time. That's Raditz's money. Don't you feel ashamed? We're opening a dojo once we get home, immediately. Chi-Chi stood akimbo. Raditz, Goku, and Gohan stared at the paper bag filled with the prize money in Chi-Chi's hand but didn't dare to argue. Thanks to Mr. Satan's idea of paying tuition fees, Chi-Chi started making a big recruitment banner for their family dojo. The new Sun-style dojo is recruiting disciples. The big family of 3 champions, Son Raditz, Son Goku, and Son Gohan, were written on the big banner. Hey! I don't recall having a family name. Raditz had apparently been renamed to Son Raditz just now. Isn't it fine? It's better if we all have the same family name, it'll increase the cohesion and popularity of our dojo, said Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi quickly convinced Jine as well, now her new name was Sun Jine. After staying behind and recruiting disciples for a whole hour, they managed to recruit 50 enthusiastic disciples. The annual tuition fee for adults were 50,000 zenny, for juniors under the age of 15 were 20,000. They recruited 20 adults and 30 juniors, bringing their annual income to 1.6 million zenny. Chi-Chi's eyes were shining with zenny signs. Even calling herself a genius for coming up with such a method. Raditz asked Tien Shinhan how much their tuition fees were for the Tien Shin-style dojo. It was only 20,000 zenny for adults, and free for juniors. Chi-Chi felt a bit embarrassed, but she wouldn't stupidly lower the fees now. The Sun family brought their 50 disciples back to Mount Paozu. Once they arrived back at home, they started building the dojo. After cutting down many trees and cutting numerous big boulders and even half a small mountain, they built the dojo a few kilometers away from their home. Even Piccolo was pulled in by Chi-Chi to help build the dojo. She even tried to rename him to Son Piccolo, but Piccolo also hurriedly agreed to teach in the dojo when he was free before he was forced to be renamed. The dojo was done building the next day. Some people even moved over their families to live in empty Paozu, while others moved out from their home to live in empty Paozu. It couldn't be helped, Goku's family just lived too far away from the cities. It was pretty difficult to keep living in the city and commute for several hours each day to come to the dojo and then commute back home for yet another few hours. Everyone was smart enough to bring a house capsule before coming here. After they had chosen a good spot, they uncapsuled their house. Raditz didn't mind teaching the disciples for a bit. Since the only part of his training was to master the Super Saiyan state, he was constantly training wherever he went. Piccolo was first responsible for teaching the juniors, but he was too fierce and Chi-Chi kicked him out. Since Gohan was of similar age to the juniors, Chi-Chi let him teach them. Videl, who had lost to Gohan and cried in the junior division during the WMA, was now looking at Gohan with starry eyes. With her ability, she wasn't able to tell just how strong Gohan was during the junior division. But now that Gohan was teaching the juniors, he would naturally reveal some of his strength. Videl had always been a martial arts enthusiast, maybe influenced by her father, Mr. Satan, who wanted to become the world's strongest martial artist. She herself loved martial arts. The juniors were so excited, they wanted to learn how to fly and shot out explosive energy attacks. But most of them were constantly asking when they could also transform into the Golden Warriors. The transformation was so cool for these young fellows. Of course, that would never be possible. Since there were quite many juniors, Goku and Raditz would sometimes rotate and help Gohan in instructing the juniors. Then for the adults, Piccolo, Goku, and Raditz would rotate in that order every day and instruct. If you want to support me, check out my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/Kaioshin. I tend to polls that decide important plot stuff in my P at Trian. Many thanks to my awesome patrons. Ben Phillips.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.